listening to the audio. Meditations for loving relationships. So it talks about relationships. There's two theories. They're in a classroom, and the other theory is that we were attracted to and chose a partner most similar to our mother, or for the female, most similar to father, maybe father figure. Is that too pop psychology like?
Well, what the speaker in the recording stated was either like or unlike, which gave you a spectrum in comparison to your opposite sex parent.
Oh. Does that mean that one may decide, I don't want to marry a woman that's like my mother for some reasons? Oh, or whatever woman you were most influenced by growing up. Could be your stepmother, or could be your siblings that were women, or whatever. Or maybe it was watching a TV show like the Mary Tyler Moore show or something. Or Friends. Want to marry Courtney, what's her name?
Cox. What do you recall? What led you down that route to explore this bundle of questions?
What led me to explore loving relationships?
It's a great question. I mean, it's a good. You don't have to be smart from an intellectual or an analytic perspective. You have to be smart in a practical sort of way when it comes to loving relationships.
Yes.
But then there are perhaps other things that I'm probably not aware of when it comes to them. So I'm going to remain quiet for the remainder of this session and just kind of listen.
Yes, I grabbed this CD and popped it into my mega storage Sony 300 CD player. For the first time, I have not heard this CD. I found it at a like a Goodwill kind of place, a thrift shop, maybe a few dollars for CDs. And I said, "Oh, this looks like an interesting CD." And I threw it in my stack of CDs I haven't heard yet. This one, another CD I haven't heard yet. Oh, it sounds like Placido Domingo. I've heard some of this one. It's like jazz. Oh, have you heard The Commitment? They sing Mustang Sally, Take Me to the River, Chain of Fools, Dark End of the Street, Try a Little Tenderness, In the Midnight Hour. Oh. Oh. K.D. Lang. Oh, I got so much to listen to. I even have audiobooks that I listen to, and there's so many hours, and I barely finish one book. Well, I take turns. I switch back and forth between books. There's not enough time, and then tomorrow I may die.
Right. That's our topic for Monday from 6 to 7 p.m. is how do you, it's almost Klingon. How, how do you find yourself in a situation where you're dying a good death?
Oh, is that for Monday at Central Philosophy Meetup,
Yes, 6 p.m.,
6 p.m.,
just 1 hour.
just 1 hour, where we will talk about how to have a good death. You know,
Well, really, I titled the session Al Ghazali Being Present. And I gave a couple of resources in the description. And then there's also a link to Al Ghazali from Wikipedia. He was a 11th century medieval scholar, very much studied in the Greeks. He one of his works was called The Incoherence of the Philosophers, where he actually counters Plato and Socrates. Or yeah,
didn't he invent algebra?
no, that was Alcoa's. I have to read his name each time because I haven't heard it enough. It's the other guy whose name starts with a quaff.
Or Rosmi or something like that.
Yeah, you just Google or inventor of algebra and he'll show up.
Oh, it's another Al.
Well, Al is just a prefix like the Spanish L.
You can call me Al.
The. Yeah, the.
El.
Yeah. The Israeli airline is one of the more interesting, Al. Because Al is sort of like an ancient regional name for God, and then you're saying Al, the God, but then L itself is a definite meaning. It is the definite. So there's like that band from the 80s and 90s called the.
So God's name in Islam is the.
No, the God's name is not. We don't know God's name. I mean, if you're a Christian, you've got a practical handle for God. And you could say that I choose for my God to be Jesus Christ or the Nazarene. That's one way to go about things, and then that's a definite because there's if you've seen the Son, you've seen the Father.
Oh, so there's our problem. We don't know the's name. We can't call him, and so that's why he's not listening to our prayers. We're praying, and he's saying, well, he's not praying to me. He didn't call me.
Well, apparently, if you read Exodus, there's a departure of God's presence from the people. He leaves them to wander for 40 years after being upset with them until the next generation has come up and is able to take over for them. And those who stopped listening to God, he left to their own wiles. Because although God fulfills his promises, I would say that the presence of God is more important than the promises themselves.
The presence of God is more than the promises. Or
look, promises will come, but it's not the blessing that we should pursue. It's a way of being so that the blessing can move through us, and also so that we can be a blessing to others in like manner that Jesus came to serve. We're here to serve others. But if all you're after is just the blessings, but you don't have the presence, and all sorts of evil and error can enter into your life and wind up hurting not only yourself but others. That's why the first and most important commandment, again, is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your soul, with all your mind. And then love your neighbor as yourself being the second, because if you don't have these things central to your being, then if all you're doing is pursuing, let's say, material gain, then that material becomes, in essence, your idol. You depart from God in that process, and all sorts of error spawns out, and evil and hurt, generally speaking. I gotta go.
May the presence be in your life at every moment.
Who's left, Tyro?
So we are.
Who's left, Tyro? Just me and you?
We're talking with Mike on the bike, Dominic, and our CFPM. That R means Rami, and CFPM means Central Florida Philosophy Meetup. And John Young Pao is in a room full of people listening to the sermon in a funeral. I attended. I think it was 2016. No, 2017. Yes, and Rami is back. So when Rami left, we lost his presence, but we never lose his presence, and that is a blessing, is it not?
There's an author by the name of Joseph Garon. He wrote a couple things. One, he did a whole series of books called Joseph, which was basically what if Jesus came today and moved into your town and started being Jesus, and how would the town respond? That was a really neat series from the 80s and 90s. Then of novels, and then he also wrote a work which was a retelling of a story of a 16th century monk who lived in a monastery, and only he said it in the 20th century as living as connected to I think hospital, but and the title of that work is called Never Alone. What is it to be always in connection with God for every moment, for every instant of the day?
And does it work like quantum experiments where the observer, the consciousness looks, and then the wave becomes a particle? So when we look towards God, then God becomes a particle in our life. When we don't look at the wave.
There's a quite a bit of theology developed on the idea, the concept of just focusing upon Jesus.
Focusing upon Jesus. So Jesus is the particle and God is the wave. So when we focus on Jesus, we have come to a point. And we do know Jesus's name, but we don't know God's name, or the name, Allah's name. The Jews write G with an asterisk and a D to signify his name. Or there's 72 names of God.
There are 99 in Islam and 100 in Christianity.
Maybe they're all imperfect names, so maybe they're pointing at it,
right,
in different directions.
I wouldn't say that they're imperfect so much as they're no one name is able to capture.
So we need them all.
God, right?
At all angles, all degrees, 360 degrees. No, it's a sphere, so it's 360 degrees multiplied by 360 degrees.
Oh, I think Noah learned this. Where can man go and hide and escape from God?
When we die, do we escape from God?
That's a big question.
Before we were born, were we escaped from God?
Before we were, I subscribe to the view that what we do when we're being born is that we're inheriting the same spirit that God breathed into Adam.
We're inheriting the same spirit that God gave to Adam. The breath he inhaled into our nostrils.
Oh, God exhaled, God blew into our nostril, into the man and made him kind of. But
he gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
No, just into the nostrils. It would just be blowing into the nostrils.
Nose to nose.
Wasn't there? Look.
Nose to nose.
I don't even know if he had to make contact, but the air did, right? The spirit, the breath.
What is the air? What is in the air that has spiritness? Is it in the oxygen molecules, or is it in between?
Well, it's interesting. Emerson said that the necessity of government has something to do with evil. And usually when you're talking about in Christology, the God of this world is a reference to Satan. And he's referred to as the wind, but then at the same time, there's also chasing after the wind. Goes along with that. But there's a lot of different ways to go along with it. But I feel like Mike has something to say, so let me be quiet.
Did I raise my hand?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just noticed that you went on mute. That's where I heard something. So.
I'm just listening. I mean, golly, there's probably a bunch of things I should have chimed in on, but I'm just kind of
making mental
notes.
There was something I wanted to mention though on the backside, and this comes from my own, and someone can share their own memories of their readings of the New Testament. But when I read the about death from within the New Testament, what I'm hearing is that yes, we all die, and death comes like a thief in the night. And we don't know the hour or the day when our appointed time will come. But then I read the section about at the end of the age, which I've read into as being when the last person has died, then we all get to be risen up, or it could be that some people are still living, and then the primary central event in various branches of Christology. I don't know that's part of the Eastern Orthodox tradition, but the idea is that that Jesus will come back, and both the living and the dead will be called into judgment at that point in time. So I don't see us as having a judgment until that occurs.
So we have to wait a long time. We have enough nuclear armaments to kill us all at once, maybe, and then we can get it out of the way and get.
It's not going to work that way. And I wouldn't suggest trying to force it, but it could be this afternoon. When I say we don't know, we don't know. Just be ready.
Yeah, maybe.
Where does time exist, John?
Maybe individually, when we die, we go into the judgment court.
Wouldn't that apply that we're still alive then if we're being judged? Like in that story that I was talking about, Revelation, they talk about the 4 horsemen, and death was just one of them. And then they talk about people, the first phase are going to be taken up. And then they also talk about a story about a bunch of people in white cloths, and they're actually underneath the throne of God. So Are they dead? Probably not. It's just probably absence of being on this realm, as a possibility. But,
So there's an earlier scripture that says, "Do not be afraid of man who can destroy your body,
mhm,
but be afraid of the Lord who can destroy both your body and your soul."
mhm. Very true. Yep. It does say that statement. Yep. So if we're going to play with that ideal, then what we call time, can we truly perceive it when we're in the vessel? Again, what is time? Like I could ponder the idea of what we call time, such as a clock, a watch, a sun and the moon, but I've come to my awareness, those are just gauges. So then, where's time and space? Why do we have concept of laws? The light, the air, the wind, space. What man created policies. We just bastardize the words by saying we make nature's laws. Well, nature's untamed and wild. We've become so domestic, we forgot. Go ahead, Art.
We discover nature's laws through science.
But then we have to break down what nature really means. In some languages, nature means untamed and wild. So when, become like nature, become wild again. Laws aren't what we call laws. Like it's abbreviation of 4 letters, like the word news, northeast, west, and south. We just use acronyms of 3s, but nature has acronyms of 4. So when we play with the concept of laws, land, air, water, and space, or light, air, wind, and space, that has nothing to do with humanity. Those are boundaries that are set upon those elements that we can either see or don't see. So I can't see light. I'll see the sun and I'll see whatever ray it comes out. It's the Lord of the light. And then there's the moon. It's the Lord of the darkness. Rulers. That's all that is. So, you said a valid point, where it does talk about strict. Anyway, scripture, whatever you want to call it, where the Lord, Lord will judge or whatever it's going to do outside of the vessel. But that means that our soul, whatever our soul is or isn't, because, using an English language, you can have so many misinterpretations and interpretations of what we perceive things. You said it way earlier, and I guess a couple earlier today's sessions, it's our own perceptions. How do we perceive thoughts? How do we perceive feelings? Do we identify a feeling as ours or an experience? Some people will say both, but then they'll say, well, then what's the experience of the physical? What's the experience of the mental mind or the emotional mind? As I say mind, because mind encompasses all of that. And then there's the emotional, that's kind of like where the heart derives from. Again, these are just all possibilities, and I don't really like to quote individuals because I realize that'll be like you guys quoting me. Dominic's no longer with us, so he wrote 1,000 books. So I'm going to give my interpretation. It's kind of like watching a painting. You can have many interpretations of that painting, but what was that individual trying to perceive on that painting? Well, in that moment, if he's still around or she's still around, they'll say, I was painting because I was bored. But if you guys want to interpret a slash as I was trying to create an emotional and awareness for myself, it could be. I always say could be because who am I to say otherwise? We already have too many dogmas in the world to think otherwise. Like, what is the purpose of going to the moon? What is the purpose of inventing wireless devices? It's a pondery. It's not me cleverly trying to think it's of no value, because that would presuppose that I think it has value. So, but Jay, you did say something. So what is time? As this one word, I'm just going to pop out of your conversation. What is time? And maybe to you.
Yes, time is usually measured by observing things that come back and repeat, like days and months and years. So we can measure time. But what
Are we measuring the gauges? Are we measuring the gauges now?
In gauges of
Measuring the cycles.
And so what happens when we're dead and we don't know we're dead, and we don't have ways of measuring our time while we're dead? And so Rami says that judgment will happen when everyone is dead. And so That's going to be a large crowd to judge. So whoever's doing the judgment will be there for a long time. Unless
I had to
the
modify it because it's the living and the
yes.
at the reappearance of Jesus, at least in accordance to the sort of dream journal, which is Revelation, John of Patmos's contribution to the New Testament, the final book in that collection.
Jesus will be judging us, and what gauge will he be using? I will be looking at our hearts. So does the soul have our heart? Goes with the heart, like when we die, we'll be carrying our heart with the soul. Our heart as in our core being, maybe.
Right. There's the literal heart, though, the organ that is pumping in our chest, and then there's the poetic heart, and there's other ways to describe heart too. But I like the ancient Central Asian idea of the concept of Bon, B-O with a umlaut over the top, and then in, which is a Latinized way of describing this concept, which is to say heart mind. The whole of what you experience in terms of your awarenesses and your perceptions upon those awarenesses.
Heart mind. So the heart mind goes with us after death, and then Jesus judges our heart. Was it faithful? Was it true? Was it loyal? Did it love God and others enough? Is there a gauge to say, oh, you didn't quite make it, you're at 98%, too bad?
Well, that's the beauty of Jesus Christ and his sacrifice, his willing sacrifice of his body, because with that he put an end to all human feeling and want for the seeking of blood, be that human. Some may even say there's no need for even animal sacrifice anymore. Some would say that. And there's some Jews who still practice animal sacrifice. They feel like if they split the throat of a chicken with a razor blade and let it bleed out, then there's the act of doing that, or the blood being released, will somehow cleanse them of their sins for that year. This is an actual practice that occurs within certain Orthodox Jewish communities.
Could there
and
be
they just toss it in the dumpster and they're done?
There's some physical evidence or proof that does work, like Dominic has said, that the blood carries the memory of the person. So could it be that the memory has certain energy, and so when the blood is released, that energy, it has to come out of the blood and is in the ether, and it looks for another host, and it finds one nearer, and it goes into the person that did the sacrificing, and it embeds itself into the blood again. So this memory goes into the person sacrificing and gives the person extra psychic energy, and he feels, I've killed someone, and that blood came out and makes me feel powerful somehow.
There is ancestors in what we call the blood. Sometimes people might interpret as the soul. So when the judge, whoever judges, will judge the soul, not the vessel. So when we release the blood, this is kind of the idea. Like we have system setups here where it's your honesty will determine whether or not you move on or you come back again. So whether you have a representative of Muhammad, Jesus, whoever, they're just going to represent you in the court system. The judges that we have today aren't judging you per se. They're judging what they base the policies on. So if you're honest and say, yeah, those are all the things that you've made me aware of, again, to recall all my things I've done. I've sacrificed animals. I've done this. So then because you're in the karma realm, or the illusional realm. There's the play part and there's the action part. Because you played out what you did in the action realm, then your reward should be justly fit. So what do you want to do? Because you haven't rewarded yourself to move on to another realm. So how about you just get rebooted, and then you can have some of that blood and ancestors within you. You know, this is why when people actually, some cultures or some, not cultures, religions, where they scatter all this information with Jehovah Witness, Mormons, Seventh-day Adventists, and the Muslims and all that. There's all these pieces and parts, but it's our responsibility to put it together. That's why some don't believe in blood transfusion, because they realize, not them, the people that follow it, but the people that gave them that information realize that there is memory stored in all of that. So that book of life is within you, whether you know it or not, and you're writing pages on it over and over again. And only you in this physical realm, because we can't understand your story. I don't know what everybody does behind closed doors. You know, that's your choice. And if you truly want to share something and say, okay, this is what I do, I harm other people, or I have mean thoughts. Again, human beings, when we're in these forms, well, what can I do about it? I can't do nothing for you. You know, this is where when people want to go into congregations, they've already misled themselves and sin, because it's an individual journey. You know, like, don't be like those other people. They pray openly. No, that's why you have people that are wailing walls, or they go to churches and all that. Do it privately. Your Lord, your God, or whatever you want to call them, will reward you in the light, in the physical realm. Reward you, because you'll be the example. You'll be a beacon. Hence the the Israelites, because the Jews were just in other nations. They're just, anyway, that's another story. So we'll put you, and if you follow me, the Lord, the one that's ruling in this particular age or in those ages, you follow me, I will make you a beacon on a light, like on a mountain. But if you don't, I will strike you down to be an example to all the other nations. Now, how many people can truly say, I want to take that on? It's a challenge. It's a challenge with each individual person. You know what I mean? Like when Abraham or whatever, I will come back in 400 years to see whether or not your ancestors have followed your teachings or the teachings I gave you. And even Abraham came from what? From another Hindu version, and then from there you can go back to the Egyptian times, you know, and then you find out a lot of people that are dark skinned would always say, well, we were the first ones. Yeah, you were the first one manipulated in Africa. You know, this is not about our skin color. This is not about our religion. This is an individual journey. We can learn from other people like, you know, Mike or Rami or you, could be like a little stripe on a tree, so I know which way to go and which way not to go. But it's still my responsibility to see whether or not it brings value to me. Just because a whole bunch of people follow a particular teaching does not mean it's right, let alone does it make it wrong. And if it is right, but you lose yourself in it, what purpose does that serve you? You know, anybody can have a flag. I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim. But do you question it within yourself? Because whatever it's going to judge us, it's going to be not a judgment that we think, it'll be your own. Is this you? Is this what you did? Is this how you helped humanity, the play realm? Is this how you help humanity? You wrote a whole bunch of books. Did you understand what it does to the mind? You want it to be rebooted in a Hindu culture, or you want it to be rebooted in an English culture or in an American culture. How did that benefit you? Don't worry about the rest of the realm, because reality would be whatever reality is to you. Would it matter whether you're there or not? Like I value myself as insignificant, so I'm just chit-chatting for the sake of chit-chatting. So anyway, I get tired of myself.
That was wonderful. So
Also, Jack.
We may receive more benefit by praying by ourselves versus going to a gathering, because when we're in a gathering, we may be showing off or showing others that I am devout, and it's evidence for others.
We could be the sheep. We could be the sheep and not realizing there's a cliff at the end, and we're all just following each other to the end. Not to say whether or not the jump is to what we're supposed to do. Maybe we're destined to jump and follow the pack, but it's each individual person to question it. It's when you start defending or feeling that you're being attacked, then you need to question even more and say, why would I defend being Christian? If I'm so sure of what I'm doing, or if I'm so sure of being a Muslim, then why would I need to be in a pack? I got to experience it, move on. If that was the case, then we all should stay in grade 9, because let's say I enjoy grade 9. Well, then I'm going to force myself to stay in grade 9. That's the mindset. Listen to the word mindset that we do. We also put cement on it. Now, if a person truly values the concept of being, I'm only using one dogma, or in this case, religion. I could say the same thing about state. I could say the same thing about science. You could say the same thing. I could say the same thing about biology, let alone what I really like to play around with, that we're all encompassing, is commerce. If people truly understood commerce, they would understand why they're taking their vaccine shots. It's not about health. If it was truly about health, the only one that I've seen out of all 4 pictures here that's actually doing anything that resembles health on a physical level is Mike. You know, for me, you know, unless I choose to be on the phone and I walk around or whatever, but I designate my time of sitting down, talking to other people in front of a computer. So that's just me. Now, if I want to go out there and do some gardening and all that and help out nature and all that, that's my choice too. Doesn't mean I'm going to understand all of it. But again, it's not about, you know, it's commerce. I deviated. The number one dogma right now is commerce. We all follow the concept of money, the God called money. You know, we could say otherwise. I don't worship it. I said, really? Worship means to work for. So do people actually give up their energy for exchange for what? Rice? For shelter, for food, or what's in between now? So we do all follow the concept of money. And in the back of the currency of the American dollar, in God we trust, because they didn't want to make it so bold. In money we trust. And we'll die by that double-edged sword. And that's just what it is. Now that's not to make fun, because most of you guys are from America. No, you guys are just in the empire. England, Yorkshire, England was the empire capital. New York is the capital of this empire. The chance we'll probably have a couple of dynasties to boot. You know, we keep coming back over and over again, whether or not we value the concept of reincarnation or not. But then the question is, if you don't value the concept of reincarnation, then the question is to say to oneself, I usually say it in a more tougher tone of voice, then why the fuck am I here? Other people might say, well, I come back, what? Why don't you come back as a guy that owns all these 18-story buildings? Why don't you come back as a billionaire? Why don't you reboot yourself back into a very attractive physical body? Or why don't you reboot yourself back in as a royalty family? Well, I don't think that's true. Well, then that opens up another question then, if we're going to close that then how did we achieve those accomplishments? Well, I don't know that, Dom. Well, then it all goes back to then spend time doing self-exploration, explore the self. Most people are never going to get to that awareness. We'll play around with words and we'll think that for some reason I grasp the concept of Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha. But I can assure you, and I say this arrogantly, all 4 of us right now would not actually be able to follow Buddha and Jesus and their teachings and give up everything that we have. And if you think otherwise, go inwards, ask that question and say, well, if I'm really being honest with myself, would I give up my children? Would I give up with this? I'm going to bring strife into the world. Mother will be against fathers, children will be against each other. You know, I didn't, come here to, when I hear the story of Jesus, he could have been a vampire, drinking blood and all that. The first time I came here as a pleasantry. Second time, I'm going to come here and rip you guys all apart. Because you want to stay here. You want to stay in my brother's kingdom. Enjoy it. That's fine. I'm not saying this in a negative connotation. Enjoy it. Embrace it. The bear of the light. He's here to judge. But he's only going to judge you what you do or don't do, because we are in the physical. Now, that's all under the premise that these stories are what they are.
But if Jesus died for our sins,
yes,
then why is there a need for judging? Can you help us with that, Mike?
Yes.
Change the word sin
so
to miss.
There is